Vincent Blackwell was a man cloaked in wealth, his sleek black cars gleamed like specters, his towering estate loomed over the city like a watchful phantom, and his fortune whispered promises of eternity. Yet all of it crumbled to ash 5 years ago when his only son, Elias, was stolen by a grotesque twist of fate in a car accident that left twisted metal and unanswered screams. Every Sunday since, Vincent haunted the fog-draped Thornwood Cemetery, a desolate patch of earth on the city's edge, clutching a bundle of lilies, Elias's favorite, whose pale petals seemed to glow faintly against the gloom. The graves stood like silent sentinels, and the wind carried a low, mournful wail through the skeletal trees. But on this Sunday, as Vincent trudged through the mist toward Elias's resting place, something unnatural pierced the stillness. A small, hunched figure crouched before the headstone, shrouded in shadow. The boy couldn't have been more than 10, his clothes shredded like they'd been clawed by the wind itself, his face smeared with grime as though the earth had claimed him. His wild, matted hair danced in the breeze, and his bony fingers traced the carved letters of Elias's name with an eerie reverence. Vincent stopped dead, the lilies trembling in his iron grip. This was no ordinary trespasser. Thornwood was a private necropolis, its gates locked to the living, a sanctuary for the dead alone. Who or what was this child, defiling his son's grave? A chill snaked up Vincent's spine as he barked, his voice cutting through the fog like a blade. "You there, boy? What are you doing here?" The child's head snapped up, his wide, hollow eyes locking onto Vincent's, two gleaming orbs brimming with terror and something defiant, something ancient. For a heartbeat, they stared, Vincent towering in his crisp black coat, the boy a frail wraith against the gray stone. Then, with a sudden, animalistic lurch, the child sprang to his feet and darted into the twisted woods beyond, swallowed by the darkness as if the trees themselves had claimed him. Vincent stood frozen, the lilies slipping from his grasp to scatter across the damp earth like offerings to some unseen force. His breath hitched, not just from the encounter, but from the gnawing dread clawing at his mind. The boy's gaze had burned into him, those eyes, too familiar, too alive, like a distorted echo of Elias staring back from the abyss. The cemetery, once a refuge, now felt like a trap, its silence mocking him. He took a shaky step toward the woods, the shadows shifting as though something lingered just out of sight, watching. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of decay and a whisper he couldn't place, a voice, perhaps, or the rustle of something not quite human. That night, sleep eluded Vincent, the boy's spectral figure clawing at the edges of his sanity. Who was he? Why had he come to Elias's grave? And what had driven him to flee into that cursed forest, as if pursued by the dead themselves? The boy's hollow eyes nodded Vincent Blackwell's mind, a relentless specter that refused to fade. Sleep brought no reprieve, only fractured visions of Elias's twisted wreckage and that wretched child kneeling in the fog. Determined to unearth the truth, Vincent summoned his private investigator, Gideon, a gaunt figure with a voice like gravel and eyes that saw too much. "Find him," Vincent commanded, his tone sharp as a blade, "a boy, no more than 10, at Elias's grave yesterday. I want to know who, or what, he is." Gideon nodded, his thin lips curling faintly as if he relished the hunt, then vanished into the city's underbelly like a shadow slipping through cracks. Days bled into nights, each one heavier than the last, as Vincent's gilded world unraveled. His vast office, once a throne room, now felt like a crypt, its walls closing in, the ticking of the clock a death knell. He saw the boy everywhere, in the flicker of a dying bulb, in the warped reflection of his whiskey glass, in the wind's low moan outside his estate. Gideon worked in silence, a predator stalking prey. He scoured grainy footage from the cemetery's lone camera, its lens half obscured by creeping vines, and questioned the hollow-eyed vagrants who lingered near Thornwood's rusted gates. Whispers led him to shelters where the forgotten huddled, their mutterings laced with fear of a boy who spoke to the dead. At last, Gideon's voice crackled through the phone, cold and deliberate. "His name's Caleb. Lives with his mother, Mara, in a rotting warehouse on the east side. They're ghosts, moving, hiding, always watching. The boy's been at the grave for months, Vincent. Every week, like a ritual. Vincent's pulse thundered, a storm brewing in his chest. Where are they now? He demanded, already reaching for his coat. Still there, Gideon rasped, but tread carefully. That place, it's wrong. Without hesitation, Vincent tore through the city, the hum of his car a growl against the night. Questions clawed at him. Why Elias's grave? What tied this urchin to his son's restless spirit? The warehouse loomed like a carcass of industry, its shattered windows gaping like empty sockets, its walls streaked with mold and graffiti that seemed to writhe in the dim streetlight. Vincent stepped inside, his polished shoes grinding glass into dust, the air thick with damp rot and a faint, metallic tang like blood long dried. Hello, he called, his voice swallowed by the cavernous dark, answered only by the drip of unseen water and a skittering in the shadows. Then, from the gloom, a small figure emerged, Caleb, frail as a wisp, his tattered clothes clinging to him like a shroud. Up close, he was a living skeleton, his skin stretched tight over sharp bones, his eyes glinting with a feral mix of fear and curiosity. Who are you? Caleb whispered, his voice a threadbare echo that sent a shiver down Vincent's spine. I'm Vincent Blackwell, he replied, forcing calm into his words, Elias's father. I saw you at his grave. Why were you there? Caleb flinched, glancing into the blackness behind him. From the depths, a woman stepped forward, Mara, her face a map of exhaustion, her frame brittle yet defiant. Her eyes, sharp as shattered glass, met Vincent's. I'm Mara, she said, her voice steady but laced with something haunted. Caleb's mother. We didn't mean to disturb your dead. We had to remember. Vincent's blood ran cold. Remember what? He pressed, dread coiling in his gut. Mara drew a trembling breath, and her next words struck like a thunderclap. Elias was Caleb's brother. The words hung in the dank air of the warehouse like a curse. Elias was Caleb's brother. Vincent Blackwell staggered, the ground beneath him tilting as if the earth itself recoiled. His son's face, Elias's bright eyes, his crooked smile flickered in Caleb's gaunt features, a ghost peering through the boy's hollow stare. What are you saying? Vincent choked out, his voice a ragged whisper. Mara's gaze faltered, her hands twisting together as if to strangle the truth. I carried him when Elias died, she murmured, a secret I never told. You were a fortress then, Vincent, cold, unreachable. I thought you'd cast us out, call me a liar clawing for your gold. The revelation gnawed at him, a blade twisting in old wounds. Caleb, his grandson, had been scavenging in shadows while Vincent drowned in wealth, blind to the blood that bound them. Why the grave? He rasped. Caleb's small voice cut through, brittle as frost. I felt him there. He talks to me sometimes, in the wind. That night, Vincent's world fractured further. He saw Elias in every corner, a flicker of movement in the dark, a laugh carried on the breeze, blurring the line between memory and madness. Determined to claw back what he'd lost, he swept Caleb and Mara from their rotting purgatory. He gave them a home, a flicker of warmth against the city's chill, a modest house where the shadows didn't cling so tightly. Yet the air thrummed with unease. Mara watched him like a hawk, her trust a fragile thread, while Caleb spoke of Elias in hushed tones, as if his brother lingered just beyond the walls. One evening, beneath a sky bruised with twilight, Caleb tugged at Vincent's sleeve. Can we go to him? He asked, eyes wide and unblinking. I want to tell him we're okay. Vincent's heart clenched, but he nodded. The three of them, Vincent, Mara, and Caleb, returned to Thornwood Cemetery, the lilies in Vincent's hands trembling like offerings to a restless spirit. The fog coiled thick as they approached Elias's grave, the headstone jagged against the dusk. Caleb knelt, placing a crude drawing, 3 stick figures under a smeared rainbow, against the stone. "Hi, Elias," he whispered, "Grandpa's here now. He says you were brave." Vincent sank beside him, the lilies spilling across the earth, their scent mingling with the rot of fallen leaves. "Elias," he breathed, voice breaking, "I failed you. But I'll guard them, I swear it." Mara's hand brushed the stone, her words a faint hymn, "He's like you, Elias. And Vincent, he's changed." A gust swept through, sharp and sudden, rustling the trees as if an answer. Vincent's skin prickled, he swore he heard a sigh, faint and fleeting, from the void. As they stood, Caleb gripped his hand, peering up with those uncanny eyes. "He's happy now, Grandpa. He told me." Vincent's breath caught, the weight of years lifting yet leaving a hollow ache. Under a sky pierced by stars, they walked away, not whole, not unscarred, but tethered by a bond forged in grief and shadows, a fragile light against the dark that Elias had left behind.